There was once a leaf that fed empires. Right. It nourished armies, marching across continents. It sustained villages through famine. It healed the weak, gave strength to the weary, and carried civilizations through chaos. Yet today, it is dismissed as nothing more than a weed. A plant erased from textbooks, ignored by markets, and forgotten by history. But its story is not gone. It waits, buried in the soil, ready to be remembered. Welcome to Forgotten Leaf Secrets. Here, we uncover the plants that carried humanity through its darkest hours. The crops that healed, sustained, and empowered before they were silenced. This is the story of the leaf that fed empires. But was called a weed, long before modern supermarkets, this leaf was the backbone of survival. Empires rose on its abundance. Kings ordered it planted across conquered lands. Generals carried sacks of it to feed armies on endless marches. In drought-stricken regions, when wheat failed and rice withered, this leaf endured. It grew in poor soil, clung to rocky ground, and refused to die. Villages that had nothing else still had this leaf. It was the difference between famine and survival.
Real.
Ancient healers praised it as medicine. They brewed it into tonics for the weak, crushed it into poultices for the wounded, and fed it to children to restore strength. Legends claimed it gave warriors stamina, mothers vitality, and elders renewed life. Travelers wrote of its resilience. Merchants traded it along dusty roads, calling it the green gold of the poor. It was not luxury, it was lifeline. A leaf so common it grew everywhere, yet so powerful it sustained entire civilizations. And still, despite feeding empires, despite saving lives, despite enduring where other crops failed, today it is dismissed as nothing more than a weed. Long before science measured nutrients, people measured miracles. This leaf was not just food, it was legend. Villagers whispered that it was a gift from the gods, a plant that refused to die. They called it the blood leaf, believing its deep veins carried ancestral strength. In sacred rituals, it was burned as incense to ward off famine. In weddings, it was woven into garlands to bless fertility. In funerals, it was placed on graves to promise rebirth. Healers told stories of warriors who chewed the leaf before battle, claiming it gave stamina beyond human limits. Mothers brewed it into teas, saying it carried the spirit of protection. Elders believed it connected the living to the ancestors, a bridge between survival and memory. Travelers recorded strange tales, villages untouched by plague, children stronger than their age, fields that thrived when others turned to dust. Always, the leaf was at the center. It was more than nourishment. It was identity. It was culture. It was myth woven into daily life. Centuries later, when laboratories finally tested this forgotten leaf, the results were staggering. Iron levels higher than spinach. Protein rivaling beans and lentils. Calcium strong enough to fortify bones. Antioxidants shielding cells from damage. A single handful carried more nutrition than bowls of common greens. A single acre could feed villages where wheat and rice failed. It was not myth, it was measurable fact. Scientists noted its resilience. It thrived in poor soil, demanded little water, and resisted pests naturally. No fertilizer, no chemicals, no corporate seed, just a leaf that grew freely, abundantly, and endlessly. And yet, despite the data, despite the proof, despite the undeniable strength, this leaf was dismissed. Not because it lacked power, but because its power was too dangerous for those who profit from control. Its flavor was sharp, earthy, and bitter, yet strangely energizing. Children chewed it raw in the fields, their lips stained green, their bodies filled with strength. Mothers brewed it into teas, whispering that it carried protection. Elders simmered it into soups, saying it restored life to tired bones. Travelers wrote of its power. Merchants claimed fatigue vanished after a single handful. Soldiers swore it gave stamina for endless marches. Healers testified that wounds healed faster, fevers broke sooner, and weakness faded when this leaf was consumed. It was not luxury food, it was survival food, a taste that carried memory, resilience, and hope. Every bite was a reminder that nature had already given humanity what it needed, and still, despite centuries of testimony, despite voices that praised its strength, the world would later dismiss it as nothing more than a weed. But then, The silence began. Colonial records dismissed it as primitive food. Markets labeled it unprofitable. Textbooks erased its name, replacing it with crops easier to control. The leaf was too wild, too free, too abundant. It grew without permission, without fertilizer, without corporate seed. Abundance without cost was dangerous. Industrial agriculture demanded uniformity. Crops that ripen on schedule, greens that fit machines, plants that could be patented, packaged, and sold. This leaf refused all of it, so it was pushed aside. Farmers were told to abandon it. Villages were taught to forget it. Generations grew up believing it was nothing more than a weed. Yet behind the erasure was fear. Fear of a plant that proved survival did not need industry. Fear of a leaf that showed nature's wisdom was enough. Fear of freedom growing in the soil. The rise of industrial farming demanded obedience. Crops had to ripen on schedule, leaves had to look identical, fit into machines, and survive long journeys in cold storage. Uniformity became the law of agriculture. But this leaf refused. It grew irregular, unpredictable, untamed, sprouted in cracks, thrived in poor soil, and spread without permission. It did not wait for seasons, nor bend to fertilizers. It was nature's rebellion against control. Corporations saw no profit in it. It could not be patented, could not be packaged, it could not be owned, and what cannot be owned cannot be sold. So the leaf was branded a nuisance. Farmers were told to uproot it. Villages were taught to abandon it. Generations were convinced it was worthless. Yet beneath the dismissal was fear. Fear of a plant that proved survival did not need industry. Fear of a leaf that showed freedom could grow from the soil itself. Fear of abundance that came without a price tag. Even after the world dismissed it, the leaf refused to vanish. In forgotten villages, it still grew wild along fences and riverbanks. Families harvested it quietly, passing recipes from mother to daughter, healer to apprentice. It became the secret ingredient in soups, teas, and remedies whispered only within trusted circles. In drought-stricken lands, when modern crops failed, this leaf endured. It asked for nothing. No fertilizer, no irrigation, no machines. It simply appeared season after season, as if nature itself refused to let it die. Healers never abandoned it. They brewed it into tonics for anemia, crushed it into poultices for wounds, and fed it to children when nothing else remained. For them, it was not a weed. It was survival disguised as simplicity. Travelers still found it in hidden corners. They wrote of villages untouched by famine, families stronger than their poverty, and elders who lived longer than expected. Always the leaf was there, silent, resilient, waiting. Though erased from textbooks and ignored by markets, its roots clung to the soil. Its veins carried memory, and its presence whispered a dangerous truth, that survival was never lost, only hidden. Imagine if this leaf returned today, a plant that grows without fertilizer, without irrigation, without permission. A leaf that feeds the hungry, heals the weak, and thrives where modern crops collapse. Would industries allow it? Would governments embrace it? Or would they silence it again? Branding it worthless, dismissing it as a weed, erasing it from textbooks once more? What happens when survival grows freely, refusing to be owned? What happens when abundance cannot be patented, packaged, or sold? What happens when nature itself proves that freedom can sprout from the soil? This is not just history, it is a question for our future, because if a leaf could feed empires and was still erased, what else has been hidden from us? The leaf that fed empires was called a weed. But weeds are only plants that refuse to obey. They grow where they are not wanted. They thrive where they are not allowed. They remind us that survival cannot be silenced. This leaf carried strength through famine, hope through war, and resilience through centuries. It was erased from history, but its roots still whisper beneath the soil. And now, its story returns, not as a weed, but as a symbol of freedom, abundance, and forgotten wisdom. Like and subscribe to Forgotten Leaf Secrets, because the next plant they tried to erase may hold the key to our future.